Hello everyone, welcome to the UK, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland. This video presentation is presented to you by the Group 4 of BSS Social Studies 2A. Will give you a background knowledge about the political, military or defense and economic system of the UK as well as their foreign policy as a state. So enjoy watching and have fun of learning because we will explore the UK. Okay?
Good day, everyone. So, we are the Group 4 and I am the first reporter to present. So, by the way, my name is Erica Bibaha and our topic is all about the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So, allow me to read first our learning objectives. At the end of the discussion, the students are expected to A. Identify how the electoral process is done in United Kingdom. B. Determine the party system, legislature, executive, and judiciary system and how it functions in the United Kingdom. C. Describe the military and law enforcement, foreign affairs, and economic system affairs in United Kingdom. And D. Develop understanding in the governance system of United Kingdom. So, I task to report this topic. So, my part is the electoral process, manner of choosing official. The UK is short for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The UK is a sovereign state that includes England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The capital city is London. The government is unitary, parliamentary, democracy, and constitutional monarchy. Their monarch is Queen Elizabeth II. Their prime minister is Mr. Boris Johnson. Legislator, parliamentary, upper house, House of Lords, lower house, House of Commons. Electoral process, manner of choosing official. Voting system or electoral system are the method by which they elect representatives. A voting system determines the rules on how they elect parties and candidates. The House of Commons, Scottish Parliament, National Assembly for Wales, Northern Ireland Assembly, and UK local authorities uses different voting systems. Different electoral systems are used for election in the UK. First is the first past the post. The House of Commons and local councils in England and Wales use the first past the post system. The UK is divided into constituencies, local authorities into wards. UK general election to elect MPs to Westminster. So, first past the post is an electoral system where the candidate with the most votes wins. Regardless of whether the person has a majority of voter cast, there is no runoff election in the system. In this voting method, the candidate with the highest number of votes in the constituency is declared the winner. So this system has received criticism. So there are advantages and disadvantages to this. But first, let's focus at its disadvantages. It claims that this to be unresponsive to shift in public opinion. Additionally, in a country with a pattern of geographically concentrated electoral support, one party can maintain exclusive executive control despite a significant reduction in total popular support. So its advantage, on the other hand, is that it allows voters to select between persons rather than simply parties, and it permits popular independent candidates to be elected. Above all, the FPTP, or the first past the post system are recognized for their ease of use and comprehension. Only one mark beside the name or symbol of one candidate is required for a valid vote. Second, the alternative vote or AV. Alternative vote is used to elect chairs of most committees in the House of Commons and the Lord Speaker, and by elections for hereditary peers. So alternative vote election like FPTP or first past the post elections are normally held in single member districts. When it comes to voting, however, alternative vote affords voters many more alternatives than the first past the post. Rather than indicating their preferred candidate, the alternative voters rank candidates in order of preference by marking first, second, third, and so on. A voter can rank as many or as few candidates as they like or vote for one candidate. The way votes are tabulated in alternative vote is candidates who receives an absolute majority of votes, 50% plus 1, is immediately elected. If no candidate received an absolute majority, the candidate with the fewest first choice is eliminated, and his/her ballots are scrutinized for second choice. This process is repeated until one candidate receives an absolute majority of votes and is declared lawfully elected. In this system, there is still advantages and disadvantages. First, its advantages. Transferring ballots has the advantage of allowing many candidates' votes to accumulate, allowing various and varied but connected interests to be united to obtain representation. Supporters of candidates who have a slim chance of winning can use their second choice and latter preference to influence the election of a prominent candidate. But disadvantages, on the other hand, because it function in single member district, it can sometimes provide outcomes that are disproportional when compared to PR system, and in some situation even in the first past the post. Third one is the supplementary vote or SV. Supplementary vote is used to elect elections for mayors in England and Wales and for police and crime commissioners. The SV system is like the AV system. Voters are limited to a first and second preference choice. A voter marks a cross in one column for their first preference candidate. They mark another cross in a second column for their second preference if they wish to do so. The supplementary vote system is a majoritarian one. A candidate is elected if they got more than half of the first preference vote. If no candidates receives 50% of the vote, the two candidates with the most votes are declared the winners. The other candidates are so eliminated. The eliminated candidates, so second choices, are counted. Any contribution made for the remaining two candidates are transferred. At the end of the procedure, the candidate with the most votes is elected. Now let's go to its advantage and disadvantages. First, its advantage. The winning candidate must have broad support. They do not need to win on the first vote, nor will they often have an initial majority of more than 50%, but they will require support for across the political spectrum to win the election once second choice ballots are added. Disadvantage. It is not necessary to receive an absolute majority of vote cast to win. And if the supplementary vote were used to elect an assembly or legislator, there would be no certainty that the ruling party would receive more than 50% of the votes. Additionally, the size of the seats varies and turnout varies greatly amongst constituencies, some of which are more competitive than others. Fourth one, single transferable vote or STV. Single transferable vote is used for election for deputy speakers in the House of Commons, Northern Ireland Assembly election, local elections in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So, single transferable vote is a type of proportional representative voting system that employs preferential voting in multiple member constituencies. To be elected, candidates just need a known quota or share of the votes, which is calculated by dividing the number of valid votes to cast by the number of places to be filled plus 1. Candidates are ranked in order of preference by voters who mark first, second, third, and so on. Supplies votes from quota meet candidates are given to second choice candidates. Votes from the candidate who received the fewest first preference votes but did not meet the quota are eliminated. Their votes are cast for the second choice. So now let's go to its advantage and disadvantages. First, the advantage. Elected bodies with more representation are more likely to reflect and respond to the electorate's opinion, and there is a more complex link between a constituency and its representative under single transferable vote. Its disadvantage, on the other hand, because of the process of calculating the results takes longer, the results are not normally released on the same day as the vote, and ballot sheets in large multiple members constituencies can become rather lengthy and complex. And the fifth is the additional member system or AMS. The additional member system used by the Scottish Parliament, the National Assembly for Wales, and the London Assembly. Additional member system. As separate ballot papers, voters are offered two choices. A constituency member receive one vote, while a party list receive one vote. The party list votes in each region are then counted to elect additional representatives. The number of members elected from the list is determined by the percentage of vote cast, as well as the number of constituencies members who have already been elected in the region. This is done to ensure that the outcome is proportional to the number of vote cast. So now let's go to its advantage and disadvantages. First, the advantage. More option. The additional member system offers to voters many options. Additionally, every vote counts. Although voters are find their chosen constituency candidate has more chances of winning, their second vote will help to elect a representative from the party of their choice. Their disadvantage, on the other hand, elections are more complicated when there are two votes and when determining which candidates from the regional list are elected. Additionally, for some people, having multiple MSPs representing each voter is confusing. And lastly, the last one. Closed party list. This is an additional. So the closed party list system was used in England, Scotland, and Wales to elect members of the European Parliament between 1999 and 2019. So, A voter marks a cross next to the party's name on the ballot paper. Under this approach, parties receive seats in proportion to the amount of the votes they obtain in each constituency. Votes elect parties rather than candidates. So, baliktad siya sa first past the post. The order in which candidates appear on the list is decided by the parties. So, that's all for my part, and I will now give to Miss Justine.
Okay, good day everyone. I am Justine Crospero, the second reporter of Group 4. So, in the continuation of what has Erica discussed earlier, I will be tackling the party system and the legislature of the UK. So these are the two topics that I will be discussing for today. Now let's proceed to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland's party system and legislature. But first, let's have the party system. Okay, when we say party system, it is the whole of political parties in a certain state and the elements which characterize its structure, the number of parties, the relations among them, consideration of their magnitude as well as their relation forces, their ideological and strategic locations are all elements to determine the ways of interaction and the nature of relations. Now, in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we can imply that another form of the two-party system is operative in Great Britain and in New Zealand. So, Great Britain has had two successive two-party alignments. These are the Conservative and Liberal prior to 1914 and Conservative and Labour since 1935. The period from 1920 to 1935 constituted an intermediate phase between the two. Britain's Conservative Party is actually a conservative liberal party, resulting from a fusion of the essential elements of the two great 19th century parties. Despite the name conservative, its ideology corresponds to political and economic liberalism. Similar observation could be made about the other major European conservative parties such as the German Christian Democratic Party. Now, in essence, Conservative Party is a political party whose guiding principles include the promotion of private property and enterprise, the maintenance of a strong military, and the preservation of traditional cultural values and institutions. In fact, since World War I, the Conservative Party and its principal opponent, the Labour Party, have dominated British political life. On the one hand, Labour Party, a British political party whose historic links with trade unions have led it to promote an active role for the state in the creation of economic prosperity and in the provision of social services. In opposition to the Conservative Party, it has been the major democratic socialist party in Britain since the early 20th century. With this two-party system present in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, it can be further understood in a way that we can signify on this kind of party system that only the two main parties have serious chance of winning a majority of seats to form a government. Throughout a significant period in history, these parties being the only two with the possibility of achieving majority vote and therefore forming a government. So people voted for the party which represented their social class, for example, Conservative for middle class and Labour for working class. The clear distinction between which social classes would benefit from the two parties. Rule kept these two parties as a high percentage of the vote. So in short, the sense of this two-party system describes an arrangement in which all or nearly all elected officials belong to either of the two major parties and third parties rarely with any seats in the legislature. In such arrangements, two-party systems are thought to be result from several factors like winner takes all or first past the post election systems. In such systems, while chances for third-party candidates winning election to major national office are remote, it is possible for groups within the larger parties or in position to one or both of them to exert influence on the two major parties. With that, the British two-party system depends on the existence of rigid parties, that is, parties in which there is effective discipline regarding parliamentary voting patterns. In every important vote, all party members are required to vote as a bloc and to follow to the letter the directives that they agreed upon collectively or that were decided for them by the party leaders. So, a relative flexibility may at times be tolerated, but only to the extent that such a policy does not compromise the action of the government. It may be admissible for some party members to abstain from voting if their abstention does not alter the results of the vote. Thus, the leader of the majority party, who is at the same time the prime minister, is likely to remain in power throughout the session of parliament, and the legislation he or she proposes will likely be adopted. This explains that there is no longer any real separation of power between the executive and legislative branches, for the government and its parliamentary majority form a homogeneous and solid bloc before which the opposition has no power other than to make its criticisms known. So during the 4 or 5 years for which a parliament meets, the majority in power is completely in control, and only internal difficulties within the majority party can limit its power. Since each party is made up of a disciplined group with a recognized leader who becomes prime minister if his or her party wins the legislative elections, these elections perform the function of selecting both the legislature and the government. In voting to make one of the party leaders the head of the government, the British assure the leader of a disciplined parliamentary majority. The result is a political system that is at once stable, democratic, and strong, and many would argue that it is more stable, more democratic, and stronger than systems anywhere else. This situation presupposes that both parties are in agreement with regard to the fundamental rules of a democracy. If a fascist party and a communist party were opposed to one another in Great Britain, the two-party system would not last very long. The winner would zealously suppress the opponent and rule alone. The system, of course, does have its weak points, especially in so far as it tends to frustrate the innovative elements within both parties. But it is possible that this situation is preferable to what would happen if the more extreme elements within the parties were permitted to engage in unrealistic policies. The risk of immobility is in fact a problem for any party in a modern industrial society and not just for those in a two-party situation. The problem is related to the difficulties involved in creating new organizations capable of being taken seriously by an important segment of the population and in revitalizing long-standing organizations encumbered by established practices and entrenched interest. So that's all for the party system of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The information and contents of my discussion are acknowledged from this source. This time, let's delve into the legislature of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. In the UK, the Prime Minister leads the government with the support of the Cabinet and Ministers. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system of government composed of 4 constituent nations. These are the England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Hence, the Parliament of the United Kingdom is the supreme legislative body of the United Kingdom, the Crown dependencies, and the British overseas territories. This means that it alone possesses legislative supremacy and thereby ultimate power over all other political bodies in the UK and the overseas territories. In fact, the supreme legislative body in the UK is Parliament, which passes laws for England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. The head of government is the Prime Minister, who is granted the position by being head of the majority party in the House of Commons. To define, Parliament is a bicameral but has 3 parts, consisting of the sovereign or crown in Parliament, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, or the primary chamber. Profoundly, both Houses of Parliament meet in separate chambers at the Palace of Westminster in the city of Westminster, one of the inner boroughs of the capital city, London. Now, the UK Parliament has two houses that work on behalf of UK citizens to check and challenge the work of government, make and shape effective laws, and debate or make decisions on the big issues of the day. Parliament is made up of three central elements, namely the House of Commons, the House of Lords, and the monarchy. The main business of Parliament takes place into the two houses. Generally, the decisions made in one house have to be approved by the other. Referring to the House of Commons, it is an elected chamber with elections to 650 single-member constituencies held at least every 5 years under the first-past-the-post system. By constitutional convention, all government ministers, including Prime Minister, are members of the House of Commons, or less commonly the House of Lords, and are thereby accountable to the respective branches of the legislature. Most cabinet ministers are from the Commons, whilst junior ministers can be from either house. Members of the House of Commons were elected in an antiquated electoral system under which constituencies of vastly different sizes existed. Thus, the borough of Old Sarum, with 7 voters, could elect 2 members, as could be the borough of Dunwich, which had completely disappeared into the sea due to land erosion. Besides, the principle of ministerial responsibility to the lower house did not develop until the 19th century. The House of Lords was superior to the House of Commons both in theory and in practice. So the House of Lords includes 2 different types of members, the Lords Spiritual and the Lords Temporal. The Lords Spiritual consisting of the most senior bishops of the Church of England, and the Lords Temporal consisting mainly of life peers appointed by the sovereign and of 92 hereditary peers sitting either by virtue of holding a royal office or by being elected by the fellow hereditary peers. Prior to the opening of the Supreme Court in October 2009, the House of Lords also performed a judicial role through the Law Lords. In many cases, members of the upper house also controlled tiny constituencies known as pocket or rotten boroughs, and could ensure the election of their relatives or supporters. In this case, many seats in the House of Commons were owned by the Lords. After the reforms of the 19th century, beginning with the Reform Act of 1832, the electoral system in the lower house was much more regularized. No longer dependent on the upper house for their seats, members of the House of Commons began to grow more assertive. In theory, the UK's supreme legislative power is officially vested in the Crown in Parliament. However, the Crown normally acts on the advice of the Prime Minister, and the powers of the House of Lords are limited to only delaying legislation. Thus, power is de facto vested in the House of Commons. Thus, every bill obtains the assent of all 3 components of Parliament before it becomes law, except where the House of Lords is overridden under the Parliament Acts. Apart from that, we have here the words, "Be it enacted." These words referred us by the Queen's or King's most excellent majesty by and with the advice and consent of the Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons, in this present Parliament assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows, or where the House of Lords' authority has been overridden by use of the Parliament Acts, the words "Be it enacted by the Queen's or King's most excellent majesty, and with the advice and consent of the Commons in the present Parliament assembled, in accordance with the provisions of the Parliament Acts 1911 and 1949, and by the authority of the same as follows," appear at the beginning of each Act of Parliament. Thus, these words are known as the enacting formula. The information and contents of my discussion are acknowledged from these sources. I guess this ends my part of the discussion. I hope that you have learned about the party system and legislature of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Thank you. Now, Ms. Hoylar, please take the floor.
Good day, future social scientist, and good day to you, sir. This is Rosamie Wheeler, and this will be my discussion for the continuation from the previous reporter. Without further ado, let's begin. Alright, executive. As a whole, the executive comprises the Crown and the United Kingdom government, including the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers. Okay, so let us focus first the Crown, the next Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers under the United Kingdom government. Okay, the monarch or the Crown. I know you are already know her, Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen since 1952 to present. Okay, the monarch is the head of the state. The head of the state is the highest representative of a sovereign state, serving to symbolize unity and integrity of the state at home and abroad. Knowing the head of the state in the monarchy, either king or queen, but currently now in the United Kingdom has queen head of the state. While in a republic, the rule of it is filled typically by the president, right? Okay, I know you are already aware of this. Next, psychological cement to hold the country together. It is a good point that the head of the state centralizes the welfare of its citizen. And we can perceive that the United Kingdom has its own best to social and collaboration to other countries just for the sake of its people and the country. Next, head of the armed forces. Also, the Crown can declare a war or perhaps the Prime Minister on behalf of the Crown, but it needs the permission or votes from the Cabinet Ministers. It needs long process to undertake the decision they wanted to do. Okay, opens Parliament. As a tradition, before the houses can proceed to the public businesses, either houses, the House of Commons and House of Lords. So it needs the opening message from the head of state. Same as Duterte, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, that before they commence the event, the president will give a message. Okay, the head of Church of England appoints archbishops and bishops. Archbishops and bishops appointed by the president. And not only with that, the Crown also serve as the head of the judiciary, summons and dismisses Prime Minister of the Cabinet, Parliament, Cabinet of the Ministers. And next, makes visit hospitals, schools, factories, and etc. Being a head of state has a big role. Not only visiting hospitals, schools, factories, but also other places and other organizations. So it has the same rule as the president, roaming around just to associate and to revitalize and stabilize the country itself. Okay, next. UK government. Prime Minister. Let's focus first. Prime Minister and then Cabinet Ministers. Since we already know that United Kingdom of government comprises of two, Prime Minister and the Cabinet Ministers, okay? The Prime Minister in the United Kingdom named Boris Johnson since 2019 to present here. And the Prime Minister is the head of government. When we say head of government, responsible for decision making and policy making just to strengthen and revitalize the country. And I know Boris Johnson can be a source of inspiration for others and can be a source of power from its country, right? Okay, next, speaks legitimately for all members of parliament. Talking about law, the Prime Minister must be logically or appropriately related to the law discussion. Or should I say that he must be a clever one. Next, makes decisions in the cabinet with agreement of the ministers. Okay, every decisions made by the Prime Minister, it needs a decision also towards or among the cabinet ministers. Since Prime Minister cannot stand alone without the cabinet ministers, it needs the votes from them and decisions. Right. Next, can call for a referendum. Government can call for a referendum with different purposes or aims. A process for constitutional change in which proposal is voted by the people. A people have a chance to disapprove or approve the decision made by the Prime Minister. Okay, next, chooses cabinet ministers and important subordinate posts. To strengthen the decision made by the Prime Minister, it needs cabinet ministers. It must have 20 members. Alright? Next, the Prime Minister must not solely be a policy-making decision who made the decision, but also campaigns for and represents the party in parliamentary election. Okay, next, cabinet ministers. Cabinet ministers has about 20 members appointed by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister appointed cabinet members not only to approve or disapprove the decisions, but they are in the central government in the United Kingdom. Next, ministers must be members of Parliament, House of Commons or House of Lords. Next, responsible for individual government departments. It was intended to have cabinet members just to have a responsible for individual government departments to rule appropriately and to govern correctly. Next, Prime Minister has the responsibility of shaping their opinions into policy. If Prime Minister needs the ideas from cabinet ministers, thus the ideas was formulated to turn into policy or regulations. Next, responsible for policy making. Prime Minister and cabinet ministers are intertwined to each other to lead and govern the government. Next, take collective responsibility. Cabinet ministers are responsible for the decisions they made. They are the courier for the impact from the given decision to avoid contradictions or disagreements. Alright, next, judiciary. The judiciary comprises the judges in the courts of law, those who hold judicial office in tribunals, and the lay magistrates who staff the magistrates' courts. Okay, judges on court are selected by the Lord Chancellor and serve until retirement. Lord Chancellor is appointed by the monarch on the advice of the Prime Minister and is a senior member of the cabinet. Okay, English common law. Legal year starts on October 1. It is created after the period of the Norman Conquest of 1066. Next, the use of parliamentary sovereignty has limited the development of judicial review. If our 1987 Philippine Constitution has its own limitation, therefore, the use of parliamentary sovereignty in the United Kingdom also has its own limitations. The courts cannot override the legislation. Next, judges are all for good behavior, expected to retire by age 75 and must have studied at Cambridge or Oxford. Judges must possess good behavior not biased, and possess high educational attainment. Next, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council is one of the highest courts in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom does not have a single judicial system. Every part of the United Kingdom has its own judicial bodies. The judicial system of the United Kingdom was divided into three: the judicial system of Scotland, North Ireland, Wales, and England. Next, the House of Lords is the Supreme Court of Appeal. Its judicial functions are quite separate from its legislative work, and cases are heard by up to 13 senior judges known as the Lords of Appeal or Law Lords. So it is understandable, and I hope guys you really understand my discussion. Thank you and have a nice day ahead. Thank you, sir.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. So now we're done talking about the electoral process in United Kingdom. It's a legislature, the judicial, and the executive department in United Kingdom. This time we're going to tackle about the national defense or military and law enforcement in United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The law enforcement in the United Kingdom. So, before that, here's a fact that according to the global firepower, the national defense or military in United Kingdom is ranked as 8th out of the 142 countries considered by the annual GFP review on 2022. It holds a power index score of 0.1382, which is close to zero, a perfect score. So, the UK does not have a national police force. As we all know, United Kingdom has its constituent countries, which are the England, Wales, and Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So, instead, there are 44 geographic forces in England and Wales, and a single force in Scotland and one in Northern Ireland. So most law enforcement is carried out by police officers, which are known to be the territorial police forces serving in regional police services within one of those jurisdictions. So they also have specialist police forces that work alongside the geographic forces, which include the British Transport Police, the Ministry of Defence Police, and the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. So one by one, we will talk about what are these specialist police forces that work in alongside the geographic forces. So first, the British Transport Police. The British Transport Police Authority is different from the British Transport Police. So the BTPA is responsible for ensuring an efficient and effective police force for the railways, while the BTP's responsibility is for the railways, including some tram system and jurisdiction, is usually defined as on railways, including tram systems, or for any purpose to do with railways. So it was established by the Railways and Transport Safety Act 2003, which sets out a number of responsibilities for the authority. So the BTP's responsibility again is for the railways, including some tram systems. So for instance, officers might arrest a robbery suspect or carry out a house search. Then they have jurisdiction anywhere. If it is not a railway-related matter, for instance, if they come across a robbery in the street, then the following applies. BTP officers have the powers and privileges of a constable beyond their normal jurisdiction. So, The BTP officers have the powers and privileges of a constable beyond their normal jurisdiction in three specific circumstances. First, when asked for assistance by a constable from local police, Ministry of Defense Police, or the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. Second, if they believe that someone is committing, or is about to commit an offense, and waiting for a local officer would frustrate the interests of justice. And third, to save life or prevent injury. So, in such circumstances where their assistance has not been requested by local force, the officer will need to decide whether their immediate intervention is necessary. So that is for the British Transport Police. And now let's talk about the Ministry of Defense Police. So the Ministry of Defense has 8 defense tasks. So these are the defense, security, and resilience of the United Kingdom and its overseas territories, nuclear deterrence, and the defense nuclear enterprise. Third, contribute to improve understanding of the world through strategic intelligence and global defense network. Fourth, influence through international defense engagement. And fifth, overseas defense activity. Sixth, promote United Kingdom prosperity and civil society. Seventh, direct defense. And eighth, strategic base and enabling functions. So these are all the 8 defense tasks of the Ministry of Defense Police. So just to clarify that the Ministry of Defense Police are not a home office police force, but they do work closely with colleagues in local police services to protect the wider communities that they serve together. They can also be called upon to provide mutual aid and specialist policing support. Next, they are not military police, unlike with their service police colleagues with whom they work closely, or officers. So their officers' jurisdiction extends outside the defense estate, and they have full powers and privileges of constables identical to other civil police officers in the United Kingdom. So although their work is primarily focused on armed security and guarding of sensitive sites and assets, there is much more that they can do. So this includes a range of specialisms, from dog handling to marine policing, from crime command to public order, from defense community policing to protester removal. So, and next, other fact is all MDP officers must be prepared to carry a firearm, and as part of their training, they must successfully complete the MDP firearms training courses. So the majority of MDP posts are armed policing roles, but their specialism also include unarmed duties, for example in crime command, on project surveyor deployments, and in various community policing scenarios. So counterterrorism policing is a major part of the role, and they can have been called upon as part of the national armed policing response to major incidents. And lastly, their policing mission is supported by around 260 civilian staff in a range of roles, from finance to HR, from procurement to control room operators, from fleet management to station administrators, and from kennel assistants to business managers. So these are the duties or facts of what the MDP officers does and what is it about. And next, we have the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. So the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, or CNC, is the armed force armed police force in charge of protecting civil nuclear sites and nuclear materials in England and Scotland. So, let's discuss first or dig deeper about what is civil nuclear constabulary. So as you can observe, there are no relevant sites in Northern Ireland as it is not mentioned here. And the civil nuclear constabulary was known to be, or previously known as, the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority Constabulary, under which name it is operated for 50 years, and now it is known as the CNC, or the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, and it was established on April 1, 2005 as directed by the Energy Act 2004, Part 1, Chapter 3, and it is completed the extension of armed protection of civil nuclear facilities to generating stations on March 31, 2007, with the establishment of permanent support unit at Hinkley Point Power Station. So, working in partnership with the civil nuclear industry, national security agencies, and regulatory bodies, the CNC will deter any attacker whose intent is the theft or sabotage of nuclear material, whether static or in transit within the United Kingdom or abroad. If an attack occurs, CNC will defend that material and deny access to it. If material is seized or high consequence facilities compromised, the CNC will recover control of the facility and regain custody of the material. So, there are 8 nuclear power stations currently generating in United Kingdom. So, it is no doubt that they have the CNC, which protect their nuclear sites from any danger or defend that. So in the Philippines, we don't have that because based from our constitution, it is written that we are not allowed to use nuclear powers or to manufacture or store nuclear weapons, but it is not limited to it. We are allowed to use nuclear powers or nuclear energy when it comes to medicines or other fields which is for good of the country, and we are not allowed for it to use it as a weapon. But in United Kingdom, they are allowed. And next we have the police powers and primary duties. And their primary duties, so that they are granted certain powers to enable them to execute their duties, just like here in the Philippines, our police officers, the PNP, are given powers that it will enable them to execute their duties properly. So the policing by consent. So this is famous in the United Kingdom. So what is policing by consent? So it is the phrase used to describe when the officers exercise their powers to police with the implicit consent of the public in the British model of policing. So, it expresses that the legitimacy of policing in the eyes of the public is based upon a general consensus of support that follows from transparency about their powers, their integrity in exercising those powers, and their accountability for doing so. So, as we all know, the police are the one who enforce law in the United Kingdom, just like here in the Philippines. So, their primary duties are the protection of life and property, preservation of the peace, and prevention and detection of criminal offenses. So, police are, as we can recall in our childhood days, we are afraid of police because they might get us and imprison us. But while we grow up, we realize that police officers are the one who protect our life, who protect us from danger, which can be observed in their duties as stated here in the PowerPoint presentation. Next, so the United Kingdom Security Forces. So, as we can observe in the later discussion, it is similar to us, but the term is different. So, as one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the United Kingdom has particular responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. By maintaining a global presence in uncertain and testing times, the United Kingdom Armed Forces are a force for good on the world stage, so providing constant stability and security, and are above all keeping Britain safe. So the United Kingdom security, it has 4, and we will talk about it one by one. So this first, the Royal Navy. So it is like the Philippine Navy here in the Philippines. So the role of the Royal Navy routinely patrols in the United Kingdom waters, ready to respond to terrorist, economical, or international threats. The Fishery Protection Squadron, Fleet Ready Escort, and supporting tanker fleet with Associated Aviation and Royal Marines, all held at high readiness, remain poised 24/7, 365. So, to respond to all direct threats to the United Kingdom. And of course, the submarine force is charged with operating the independent nuclear deterrent on behalf of the nation. So, as based from this explanation, they operate 24/7. So no doubt that they are ranked as 8 in the GFP review on their military defense. Imagine 24 hours, and of course it is necessary for the protection of the state, for the peace of the state. Next, we have the army. Here in the Philippines, they are called the Philippine Army. So, during the last year, the British Army sent around 40,000 soldiers abroad, contributing to NATO through enhanced forward presence or exercises such as Trident Juncture, as well as conducting signature high-profile exercises. So with non-NATO partners such as Oman during Saif Sari, the commitment to countering violent extremism and stabilization in Iraq and Afghanistan remains undiminished. With over 1,000 troops enduringly committed to those operations at home, troops are also ready to, at longer notice, to support the civil authorities in almost any way, including during unexpected natural events such as flooding. So these are the one in charge protecting inland. No, so they are responsible for the peace in land while the Royal Navy is in waters. Next, we have the Royal Air Force. This is like the Philippine Air Force in the Philippines. So as based from that term, Royal Air Force, so they are in the air. Are protecting the air above the land of a certain state. So for over 100 years, the Royal Air Force has defended the skies of Britain and projected Britain's power and influence around the world. So through their quick reaction alert capability, the RAF continuously has Typhoon fighter jets, refueling tankers, helicopters, and other aircraft ready to deter aggression or respond to terrorist tasks. And lastly, we will talk about the key challenges facing by United Kingdom policing today. So, criminal justice faces ever more challenges from society. While official figures show a drop in police recorded crime in the United Kingdom, the distribution of crime shows a more complex pattern, with violent crime showing a rise. So, here are some of the challenges that the United Kingdom policing today is facing. First, domestic violence. Threats in cyberspace. As we all know, technology is taking its place wider in our world, and bullying in internet is inevitable. Knowing that a lot of people are engaged to it, and comments and reactions are allowed, especially in Facebook. Next, youth crime and high rates of reoffending. And that's all in my part, and for the next topic, it will be discussed by Mr. Hubert Torrentara, the Foreign Affairs.
So good day everyone, how are you? I hope everyone is doing well. Now I will be discussing the foreign affairs and economic affairs of the UK, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But before our formal discussion, I would like you to remember that last week or these few days, the United Kingdom was one of the leading headlines of the world news. Why? Knowing that Queen Elizabeth, their monarch, celebrating her 70th anniversary of being a queen in the United Kingdom. And now she's considered as one of the oldest monarch in our century. Anyways, that event showed, and we can interpret that particular event in the United Kingdom, how great and influential this UK throughout the world. Not even the celebration of their queen has its impact to the people around the world. And this supremacy and great influence of UK will be reflected in their foreign affairs. So now, let's try to understand and deepen our knowledge the foreign affairs of the United Kingdom. So fasten your seatbelt and we will start now. So the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the leading agency of the United Kingdom responsible to initiate and establish diplomatic foreign relations with their country. It is headed by the Foreign Secretary. So if UK has a Commonwealth and Development Office, Philippines also has the Department of Foreign Affairs, responsible for diplomatic ties, diplomatic and foreign relations of the Philippines. In United Kingdom also, it has this office now responsible to initiate and establish relations or strengthen foreign relationship of UK to the other countries around the world. So it is headed by the Foreign Secretary appointed by the Prime Minister. So just like also in the DFA, we have the Foreign Affairs Secretary appointed by the President. Same function, same role, which is to establish and strengthen relationship of the countries that country to the countries throughout the world. So in UK's foreign affairs, the Prime Minister and numerous agencies play a role in setting policy, and many institutions and businesses have a voice and role. So in UK, guys, their Prime Minister, of course, the appointing officer of the Foreign Secretary, has a role in setting policy. The foreign policy of UK, it depends upon the discretion of the Prime Minister, how we will interact, how we will settle, and how we will establish a diplomatic foreign relation to other countries. So it greatly depends upon the discretion of the Prime Minister and the other agencies, specifically in the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, to the initiation in establishing a foreign relation. And many institutions also and businesses have a voice and role. So of course, in establishing foreign relationship, it is not also about having a simple relationship between countries, simple ties, but it also include the economic impact to the country. What if they will have a tie to this country? What would be the benefits they will get, and what the benefits that they can contribute to that country? So that's known as the give and take relationship also in the foreign affairs of that country, specifically in UK. So that's why the businesses also has a voice and role. So historically, UK was the world's foremost power during the 19th and early 20th century, most notably during the so-called Pax Britannica, a period of totally unrivaled supremacy and unprecedented international peace during the mid to late 1800s. So, it is recorded in history that Great Britain or the UK was great from its name itself. especially during in the Pax Britannica. That's the period of unrivaled supremacy and unprecedented international peace for UK. If we will say that if there's a question, what's the great country in the world? The answer is the UK. So that's how great, how powerful UK during the time during the Pax Britannica. But according to them, nothing is forever because in 1956, the Suez Crisis of 1956, an embarrassing incident led to the UK's dominant role in the global affairs to be gradually diminished. The incident in the Suez led to or started to diminish the global dominant role of UK. So that's the thing that happened that time that led to UK to diminish its dominant role in the global affairs. But despite all that, the United Kingdom remains a great power and a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. So though their greatness, their foremost power was gradually diminished during the incident of the Suez Crisis in 1956, still United Kingdom, the UK, remains a great power and a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Being a member of that Security Council is a great honor, is a great privilege for a country, because whatever the decision of the United Nations Security Council, the United Kingdom has its voice. It can vote either to affirm or negate the decision of other countries is in terms of peacekeeping throughout the whole world. So that's how great, powerful still the United Kingdom at this moment of time nowadays. The UK had been member state of the European Union since 1973. However, due to the outcome of 2016 membership referendum, proceedings to withdraw from the EU began in 2017 and concluded when the UK formally left the EU on December 31, 2020. So the European Union, it's the organization of all European countries, the countries in Europe. And UK was member of that since 1973, but due to the membership referendum of the country, they decided as a state to withdraw from EU. So it's still it is still a discretion of the Prime Minister, the decision of the citizens of the country. They still continue to be part of that organization. So the result, they will withdraw from the EU in 2017, and it is formally concluded when they formally left EU on December 31, 2020. Be guided and remember those dates in the history of, or in the withdrawal of UK from the European Union. The United Kingdom is actively engaging and participating in different international organizations in order to strengthen their foreign, economic, humanitarian, and military partnership with other countries around the world, around the globe. So of course, the United Kingdom is establishing relationship to strengthen their foreign, economic, humanitarian, and military partnership. There are many aspects why UK is active in engaging, in participating, in developing and formulating relationship to other countries. It is for their foreign, economic, humanitarian, and military partnership, in which they get benefits from that aspect. Hindi naman siguro go ka lang kapag walang benefits. So that country settle that, looking for the benefits that will return to them. Time will come. So the following are the international organizations that the UK belongs. So they're part of their foreign affairs. UK is the founding member of the following organization: the G7 or the Group of 7, G8 the Group of 8, G20 the Group of 20, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, AUKUS, a trilateral security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, OECD, an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, WTO, World Trade Organization, Council of Europe, OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Commonwealth of Nations. So those organizations, international organizations, UK was one of the founding members. Imagine how influential that country, able to initiate a global organization. So aside from being founding members, UK is also members of the following: ADB, Asian Development Bank, a non-regional member; AFDB, African Development Bank, a regional member; Arctic Council Observer, Australia Group; BIS, or Bank for International Settlement; CBSS, Council of Baltic Sea States, an observer; CDB, Caribbean Development Bank; CERN, European Organization for Nuclear Research; AAPC, Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council; EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development; Food and Agriculture Organization; FATF, Financial Action Task Force; G5, the Group of Five; G10, the Group of 10, that's for Economic Affairs in International Organization; IADB, the Inter-American Development Bank; IAEE, or the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency; International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO; ICC, International Chamber of Commerce; ICCT, International Criminal Court; ICRM, International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement; IDA, International Development Association; IEA, International Energy Agency; IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development; IFC, International Finance Corporation; IFRCS, or the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies; IHO, International Hydrographic Organization; ILO, the International Labour Organization; IMF, International Monetary Fund; IMO, International Maritime Organization; IMSO, International Mobile Satellite Organization; Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization; IOC, International Olympic Committees; IOM, the International Organization for Migration; IPU, Inter-Parliamentary Union; ISO, International Standardization Organization; ITSO, or the International Telecommunications Satellite Organization; ITU, International Telecommunication Union; ITUC, International Trade Union Confederation; the MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency; the MONUSCO, the United Nations Organization Establishment Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo; NEA, the Nuclear Energy Agency; NSG, Nuclear Supplier Group; OAS, Organization of American States Observer; OPCW, Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons; Paris Club; PCA, Permanent Court of Arbitration; PIF, Pacific Islands Forum Partner; SECI, Southeast European Cooperative Initiative, an observer; UN, United Nations Security Council; United Nations Conference on Trade and Development; UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization; UNFICYP, United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Cyprus; UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees; UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization; UNMIS, United Nations Mission in Sudan; UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency of Palestine Refugees in the Near East; UPO, the Universal Postal Union; WCO, World Customs Organization; WHO, World Health Organization; WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization; WMO World Meteorological Organization, WTO World Trade Organization, Zanger Community, also known as the Nuclear Exporters Committee. So those are the organization that UK was a member. So that's how great, how influential this country. A lot of organization either belong a regional or a non-regional partnership. UK established its foreign relations. So that's how great UK, how influential this country throughout the world. So we have the trivia. The United Kingdom contributes to some 30 international organizations, approximately 0.5 billion euros a year, which cover to human rights, trade and economic issues, health and humanitarian issues, and disarmament. So we'll always remember that UK established its foreign relation to the countries around the world to secure a foreign, economical, cultural, social, and for security purposes. So that's the mission of United Kingdom, and actively contribute something, especially during relief to operation other countries, especially if the other countries are suffering disasters. No, so that's 0.5 billion a year allocation is for the development, not just for one country but throughout the whole world. So that's great. The United Kingdom contributed for the world development. So after knowing the foreign affairs of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, let's proceed to their economic system. But first, alam nyo ba that the United Kingdom has an advanced open market economy in which the prices of goods and services are determined in a free price system. So that's the policy, or that's the price mechanism in the economy of the United Kingdom. Always remember, advanced open market economy. So let's proceed. The budgetary policy. So the United Kingdom is fiscally a highly centralized state. The central government has considerable control over their budgetary policy. Most of their public spending is directly or indirectly controlled by the central government. This means that the central government has to shoulder the blame if things go wrong. The golden rule of UK fiscal policy was to limit deficit spending to investment over the business cycle. However, public spending as a proportion of GDP increased. So, highly centralized state. So, the planning, the budgeting, the public spending of the United Kingdom is controllable by their government. So this means, no, it's stated here that if things go wrong, the government will be held liable, since they have the control, the jurisdiction in planning, in budgeting, in their budgetary policy. So their rule is to limit deficit. So of course, that's the target of almost country, to limit deficit spending to investment over the business cycle. Of course, to stabilize, to maintain the stability of a particular economy, limiting deficit spending is the key. The tax policy. So the United Kingdom has a progressive income tax system. The balance between direct and indirect taxes is reasonably fair, as measured in terms of horizontal equity. Property taxes are high and have high increase for purchases of high-value houses, but labor taxes are low compared with many other EU member states. So, progressive income tax system. Remember that. That's the tax system of UK. Progressive. It means if your salary increases, your tax to be paid to the government will also increase. So that's progressive. Nagsaka imong sweldo, nagsaka pud ang imuhang buwis or buhis. So the property taxes are high, so in UK, but labor taxes are low. So it's good to hear, no? Other policy means property taxes. It means you can afford everything. You can buy something. Uh you can you have a great asset or great number of assets, and your labor taxes are low. So it's good for the laborers that their taxes are low. It means especially to the minimum wage earners, if their country, if they have like that. So it is good. It is sound good for their economy. So that's the tax policy of a United Kingdom. The economic policy. The United Kingdom economic framework was substantially reformed after 1979 in a market-friendly direction, and most of these reforms were maintained after the election of the Labour government in 1997, albeit with some rebalancing towards Labour interests and reduction of the minimum wage. So after the Labour government, so the Labour government is one of the party in the party system of the United Kingdom. So now elected since 1997. So there was a changes, rebalancing to the interest, no, introduction of the minimum wage, so that there will be a rule, there will be a standard wages, especially to those who are having especially not in a professional area, not professional jobs. In research and innovation policy, the United Kingdom's tradition of being an active player in research and innovation dates back to the Industrial Revolution. The country's clusters of preeminent universities have for a long time played an important role in linking cutting-edge academic research with industries such as biotechnology or information and communication technologies. Of course, United Kingdom as one of the leading country, no more on discoveries. So they have also allocated budget for that, for research and innovation. So since the Industrial Revolution, they are also one of the country leading to that revolution. They continue that effort, to be active in research, in data gathering, especially in biotechnology. So as we acknowledge now, United Kingdom or in Europe, that country was one of the producers of the many antibodies and vaccines are good for the health of the people around the world. And also in communication technology, so there are a lot of innovations that happen in our world in the field of internet. Also began with from the researches gathered by the United Kingdom. The global financial system. The City of London is home to one of the world's main financial hubs. Consequently, governments in the United Kingdom have traditionally tried to protect the interests of the City of London against more intrusive regulation, whether national, European, or global. Governments have argued that special characteristics of London as a financial center are not given sufficient attention by Brussels in particular. So, global financial system. Globally, UK is the home of the world's main financial hub. So that's also how great this UK, this United Kingdom, in terms of a home of the world's main financial hub. So it's a great for them, so that they protect the interest of London to aid any regulation, because it will also affect, it has an impact to their economy. So sa kutob sila makaya, they will protect the interest of London for the benefits of their country. So the Bank of England. So the Bank of England, that's the central bank of the United Kingdom. It is promoting the good of the people of the United Kingdom by maintaining monetary and financial stability. So if the Philippines have the BSP, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the United Kingdom has the Bank of England, their central bank that promotes the good of the people by maintaining maintain their financial stability. So di ba krisis ang kwarta England, because they have the Bank of England that will regulate their monetary aspect. Their currency, known as the pound sterling. So remember, pound sterling is the currency of the United Kingdom. Okay, the current GDP of UK as of 2021, the gross domestic product of the United Kingdom was just under 2.2 billion British pounds, an increase of approximately 152.3 billion pounds compared to the previous year. So as we see, from this data that there was an increase of the current GDP of UK as of 2021 compared from the previous year. So it sounds good for their economy that there was an increase of their GDP. So the current debts and deficits. So the UK general government gross debt was 1,382.8 billion euros at the end of 2021, equivalent to 102.8% of gross domestic product. This was 34.5% lower than the average debt of the G7 member states. So even UK, known as the powerful country in the world, still has debts, has utang, may utang pa rin kahit yung powerful country. But anyways, in utang, it's good, okay naman, it's good for you to debt if you have the capacity to pay for it. So that's the rule. So if many financial institutions will allow that country to engage, to enter a loan, so it is an indication that the economy is moving and has the capacity to pay for it, because there will be a inventory before the loan or the debt contract will start, mansan. So that's a policy. So we have UK also has a debts. In UK government or general government deficit or net borrowing was 187.4 billion euros in 2021, equivalent to 8.1% of their GDP. This was 0.3% lower than the average deficit of the G7 member states. So still, we cannot deny the fact that deficit still happen even in the powerful countries, because the more projects they implemented, the more also discrepancies that will happen in their measures, in their computations as a country by their economic managers. So it is undeniable. It is inevitable. We cannot deny that fact, even to the powerful countries. And I think that's the end of my report of a discussion from the given topic about the foreign affairs and the economic system of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So I hope that you learned something from my discussion. So remember the key points, the important terms, the important data that I've shared to you, the dates, so that we will be more aware about the United Kingdom, one of the great, influential, and powerful country around this world at this moment of time. That would be all. Thank you and God bless us all.
So now you know about the UK, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Thank you so much for watching this video discussion, and we hope that you learned something from it. Thank you and God bless us all.